Hello and welcome to Freedom Under Natural Law, Funnel 5, Ignite Hearts and Minds. My name is Leslie Powers. I'll be sharing with you a presentation called The Process of Internal Monarchy, Activating the Gift of the Great Cosmic Mother. I'm going to start by sharing a brief visualization. Take a slow breath in through your nose and exhale softly through your mouth. Check in and ground into your body. Wiggle your toes, feel the centers of your palms, and notice the natural rise and fall of your breath. Now imagine that you are on a ship and you are its captain. You are more than the captain. You are also the ship. And the vast depths of the sea below are also an extension of you. In these depths live the memories of your ancestors, the history of your people, and the old stories held in your blood, while the ship's many layers and hidden rooms hold the memories of your entire life. Your ship floats on the great ocean of life among many other ships navigated by other beings. Sometimes the waters are rough and stormy, sometimes smooth and glass-like. Deep below, in the ocean of ancestral memory, energies from those who came before you live and move, and anything incomplete, unprocessed, or hungry may rise like waves at any time. Imagine many hungry ghosts, old unmet needs, unspoken words, abandoned parts of self, resting in the depths of your ship and the ocean below, sometimes stirring the waters into storms or rising up in interfering ways on the deck of your ship. They are not here to harm you. They are here because they have not yet found resolution, rest, or nourishment. Feel the power of these depths, always in motion, always in flow, as the activity of all beings on earth stirs the vast water, touching your small section of the sea. Return now to your awareness as the captain on the deck of the ship. Here is where you navigate, steer, and make choices. In your hand, you hold a navigating stone, reflecting the sun's light and helping you orient. See this stone glowing gently, giving you a sense of true direction and a portal to view what's happening below, so that through your intention you can invite the unseen to show itself. You have many helpers, crew members, inner allies, parts of you that know how to tend, repair, and care for this vessel. Sometimes you delegate to them, other times they act on their own. Sometimes they are beautifully on task, and sometimes they are not. These crew members are also part of you, part of your mind. The top of this ship is your conscious mind. Your captain self is the guiding self, connected to the sun above, the spirit of the ocean around you, and something larger that is always there. The captain tracks the actions of the crew and clearly, calmly directs their focus. For a few breaths, simply stand as this captain at the helm. Feel the subtle movements of the ship beneath your feet as it rises and falls with the waves. Remember, you are the captain. You are the crew. You are the ship. And you are connected to the sea. You do not need to control it all. You are here, awake to the process, alert, steering as best you can through rough or smooth waters, offering guidance to your crew and integrating all of your actions as one. When you're ready, open your eyes and bring with you all the knowing that you are the captain of your own ship, able to connect with your crew and your ancestral memory and capable of steering towards your chosen destination. So you are the captain of your own ship, or at least that is the goal. And this means that you have internal monarchy. What is that? Internal monarchy is the process of being self-led from awareness and choice, of being sovereign, holding an internal locus of control, being led from one's own seat of power, being free from blindly following external rulers, and this is a state of anarchy, of operating from a mindful and balanced brain state. When in the state of internal monarchy, one's core self leads the system of thought, feeling, and action. and is driven by self-responsibility, aligned with natural law principles, not fragmented parts, fear-based defenses, external authorities, or mind control programming, and is nested in care, self-love, universal compassion, and agape love. Healthy emotional processing is a necessary ingredient. When one has internal monarchy, one is clear that authority lies within oneself and that external claims of authority are illegitimate and immoral. From the book The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth by Monica Zhu and Barbara Moore, a quote, "The goddess is perceived as the energy which makes real the outer and inner worlds, the complementary images of object and subject, spinning them out from the still center, as a spider spins a web from her body into the open space of being." This is about the processing and integration of our thoughts, feelings, and actions as the foundation of manifesting outcomes. Well, what is a process? It is a way, a strategy, and to stick with the process takes knowledge and discipline. A process is a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end. It can be natural or involuntary, and it can be intentional. It is a systematic series of operations that are performed, a method, a procedure, a system. So we are going to talk about emotional and psychological processing and one way to do it. This is self-work. Self-work, inner work, or psychological processing is a healing and truth-seeking process whereby an individual takes responsibility for oneself and one's mind. This includes being intentional, taking ownership of the self and the consequences of one's actions, because our actions can hurt or cause harm to oneself or other sentient beings or to Mother Earth or nature herself. Our body is an extension of our mind. We are part of the whole. We are part of the great cosmic mother, the landscape of reality. Self-work facilitates the healing of unhealed injuries within oneself, which affects all of our relationships. Self-work catalyzes a natural process of self-healing, and together we impact world healing. Self-work involves reformulating one's definition of self in relationship to reality and towards growth and positive evolution. It involves dealing with uncomfortable feelings and dysfunctional patterns honestly. The act of psychological and emotional processing is a sacred experience and is a necessary tool for us as humans to consciously do regularly in our lives. The average person's not taught how to do this, and even more sad is the stigma around feelings and admitting to mental or emotional distress. Shame, denial, and repression are underlying barriers to people starting this process. And it's necessary to create a mental space where those shameful memories and feelings are able to be present and processed. If you're not active in your self-work and intentional in your processing, there will be consequences, and you may not like them. The law of atrophy describes the natural decline or wasting away of abilities, powers, and structures when they're not used. You could say it's use it or lose it. This relates to the physical shrinking of muscles or cells and also applies to things like our freedoms, where if we neglect a power, it makes it harder to exercise later. It's a principle of decay through disuse. While we are alive, we are dynamic and ever-moving. If we are not active, then we will atrophy or be molded by external factors. There is always a frequency and a vibration or movement along the poles of existence, and therefore no action has a consequence on our health, relationships, families, friends, communities, and larger world. We have to choose. If we do not choose growth, the law of atrophy takes over, whether we like it or not. I urge you to volunteer for the process of conscious self-work so that you are making a conscious effort to direct your own process. Self-work cannot be done involuntarily. We cannot do it for other people. It is a requirement that we as individuals agree to do this work and take the necessary steps to do so. Why this path matters. Humanity is suffering and fragmented, and this outer conflict is a mirror of our inner conflict. People are lacking the skills of emotional and psychological processing. Disconnection from nature and feminine wisdom is fueling violence, greed, and alienation, and has for centuries. Inner work can heal and soften the effects of unprocessed trauma, which is at the root of violent behavior. Behavior which violates the rights of others is violence, and violence creates trauma. Individual healing contributes directly to reduced suffering and increased freedom. Personal healing is a sacred, moral, and spiritual act, especially when an individual follows up insight with action that promotes care and freedom for self and others. The goddess is the unspeakable wisdom that grows into the very cells of the body. She lives with this sacramental truth at her center, the beauty and the horror of the whole of life and blazing in her love. Marion Woodman. We need systems thinking. Systems thinking focuses on the ways members of a system are related to one another. When you approach symptoms through that lens, you often find that they are manifestations of problems in the structure, which is the patterns of relationship of these systems in which the person is embedded, the family, neighborhood, work, country, etc., as well as the system that is embedded within them, that is their internal family. It is the natural state of the mind to have parts. They are not the product of trauma or of internalizing external voices or energies. It's just the way we're built. And that's good because all of our parts have valuable qualities and resources to give us. Systems of parts and people tend to polarize, form protective alliances, and exclude or cut off from each other whenever they are traumatized and lack effective leadership. These words are from Richard Schwartz in his book No Bad Parts. You can look at the image on the right where we can see that in the center is an individual that has relationships with layers of systems circling around you, right? The microsystem, mesosystem, exosystem, and macrosystem. And we have relationships at all these levels, in addition to the relationship over time and the changing personal and societal conditions over the course of a lifetime. And I'll add, even below this are the historical events and the conditions of our ancestors. So we really must be looking at how all of these parts interact. And this in the backdrop as well of the 7 Hermetic principles from the Kybalion. The principle of mentalism, all is mind. The principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as below, so above. And this principle is one of the most important mental instruments by which we can pry aside the obstacle which hides from view the unknown. Its use even tore aside the veil of Isis to the extent that a glimpse of the face of the goddess might be caught. There's the principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Frequency is a fundamental quality of all existence. Polarity. Everything is dual, has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature but different in degree. Think of emotions. Emotions have different vibrations, and emotions can fall on this pole of extreme. There is a principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left, because rhythm compensates. Emotions have rhythm. Emotions rise to a peak and then fall to the trough like a wave. There is the principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. And the principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles, and gender manifests on all planes. So keep these principles in mind as we talk about your psychology. These are overarching principles, and they offer a framework for understanding the universe, for understanding ourselves, and reconciling seemingly contradictory occult knowledge and achieving self-mastery. Mind, as well as metals and elements, may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. True Hermetic transmutation is a mental art. If the universal is mental in its nature, then mental transmutation must be the art of changing the conditions of the universe along the lines of matter, force, and mind. These are the cosmic laws and nature, the great cosmic mother. The universe operates according to intelligible principles or natural laws. The first Hermetic principle, mentalism, all is mind, indicates that our mind also follows these laws. All the principles operate within the greater mind. In the operation of our minds, we can see all the principles. She blankets everything as the darkness permeates the night. She operates whether we see her or not, whether we acknowledge her or not. Her power can be harnessed for good or for evil, and her principles do not rely on us. The goddess in her root form is the living, intelligent order of nature. The consciousness of the great cosmic mother, Mother, Father, God, Goddess, is embedded in all of nature and therefore all of creation. Natural law, nature's inherent and universal governing moral principles, can be recognized through observation, experience, and contemplation. It is measurable through witnessing patterns of cause and effect which operate in multiple dimensions of mind, body, and spirit. Think of Nuit, the great cosmic mother, the Egyptian goddess, who represents infinite space, divine possibility, the cosmic mother, unconditional love, the one who bears all the gods and goddesses, the mistress of all. And we activate her through care, the gift of the goddess, the eighth or lost principle. She requires mindfulness and intention to activate her gift of care. This involves conscious engagement. The cosmic mother informs us about true basic morality. For as we know, morality is a term that has been hijacked and bastardized through centuries of corruption, violence, and war, specifically imposed upon the masses by religion and government. This has resulted in deep-seated shame and abandonment within the human psyche. Religious dogma and the control mechanisms of religion and state have usurped our intrinsic gnosis abilities and replaced them with trauma-based fear and emotional conditioning of the heart and mind. True morality does not come from religion, nor is it created by man or woman, human or alien. It is inherent in the blueprint of creation, and it can be both measured and felt. Morality has both objective and subjective components and includes both matter and experience. The marriage of the subjective with the objective is the ultimate understanding and embodiment of right and wrong. It is through the subject, through the experience of the individual, that we see, feel, and measure the harm done by careless actions. And it is through the processing of subjective experience that we clear the way to objective measurement and truth discovery. That brings us to patriarchy and the wounded masculine. Patriarchy is a form of mind control and a form of Satanism. It is not the natural state of the masculine or of an untraumatized man, but reflects a masculinity that has been warped and abused to exploit the feminine in all her forms. It has been used against men and women to abuse women, men, and children, to devalue the natural cycles of birth, life, death, and to lead the way to a technocratic religion of control and human enslavement. It relies on the belief in authority, and dominance is its false paradigm. Both men and women have taken on the role of toxic abuser. It is a mind control virus that has infiltrated all minds and is being used to divide humanity, squash the feminine as the source of all life, and to annihilate the understanding of natural law among all peoples. Emotions and emotional processing have also been devalued. Reviving Sophia is to value the feminine. It is to remember her and to renew and revere and protect all living forms and the sacred rhythms of life, death, and rebirth. Egregores, statism, and external authority. An egregore is a collective thought form or psychic entity that emerges from a group's shared beliefs, emotions, and intentions, gaining power and autonomy as the group reinforces it. A collective unconsciousness which is largely habituated and hidden from conscious awareness. An egregore can be created by mind control. The belief in authority or government as a form of human control is an egregore embedded deeply in our unconscious to the point that most people do not see its origins, intentions, or malevolence. It is very prevalent in the way we parent our children. Trauma inflicted by humans against sentient beings is a tool used to control others into submission to an agenda of power and control. Manipulating emotions is a primary weapon of control. We need only to look at history. The production of fear, shame, and denial is the force which compels submission. Violence and theft inherently violate basic universal human rights, and violence creates trauma. These egregores or embedded thought systems are inside all of us and require a deep introspection with an open, humble, and observant mind to discover their operation in every thread of our lives. No one is left out.
Cellular debris is directly connected to our shadow. Going through a healing journey and a spiritual awakening journey, what we're doing is transmuting the cellular debris within our body, mind, spirit. The shadow is more than just when we think of our own personal shadow. It is that level of whatever has been left unresolved within our body, mind, spirit. But more than that, it takes on a far more invisible tone. It's not just the things that have happened within this lifetime that have accumulated our personal shadow. In fact,
I invite you to look at the rest of this video by Sarah Alcaldi, otherwise known as The Alchemist, where she talks about karma as being related to cellular debris and something that our souls carry into this life. Now, let's look at some ways other people think about this concept. The study of epigenetics shows how behaviors and environmental factors cause heritable changes in gene activation without altering the DNA sequence. Bruce Lipton, in his research on stem cells, led him to conclude that cells have an intelligence and operate as cooperative communities, responding to the signals they receive from their environment, much like a microcosm of human behavior. And Richard Schwartz, the creator of the internal family systems model, describes legacy burdens or legacy wounds as extreme beliefs and emotions that are inherited and absorbed from one's family and culture, rather than originating from one's own direct experiences. These inherited beliefs and mindsets often form the foundation of our internal psychological systems and can unconsciously drive our behavior and societal conflicts. Healing involves acknowledging these burdens and, through the self-led process, unburdening them, returning them to their source in a therapeutic context. The condition of human slavery involves legacy burdens which embed programs in us related to locus of control. Do we perceive control as internal or external to ourselves? What about patriarchy, the ruler-slave relationship, materialism, racism, a scarcity mindset, individualism, collectivism, shame and internalized oppression, outcasting, feeling not enough, powerlessness, learned helplessness, moral relativism, religious indoctrination? These are all legacy burdens that are based on a belief in authority. If legacy can be a burden, it can also be a gift. We have the ability to release the burdens and activate the gifts. We have the seeds of salvation buried within us. We can access the gold within our shadow. Trauma survivors have symptoms instead of memories. This is how our natural mind-body system protects ourselves. When we are struggling with the effects of trauma, we often don't connect our symptoms to a memory or to an original trauma. Our minds naturally split or compartmentalize in order for functioning to occur. We have a going on with normal life part of self, and then we can develop any number of traumatized child selves as a result of our natural defense responses. We have a fight response, which can look like hypervigilance in our daily lives. A flight response can lead us to escape behaviors or avoidance. Freeze responses are related to our fear, and we can also submit and feel shame related to that submission. And we also have a natural drive for attachment. It is part of our survival as infants. We cry for help. And as adults, unresolved attachment needs can lead to us as adults looking to an external authority or expert to protect us. This system is all around seeking safety, and seeking safety is related to survival. We are all acting out our collective traumas in unconscious ways. And this memory is stored in our subconscious. The subconscious is below our conscious operating system. Discovering our ancestral origins, as well as the origins of our thoughts, is important for freeing ourselves from parasitic entities that seek to control thoughts, emotions, and actions. Such parasitic control is evil, as it leads to the destruction of freedom. As living products of history, environment, programming, and survival instincts, we are all complicit with evil to some degree. Each of us carries archetypes of power and control that act to protect us from perceived threat. This is built into our biology as a natural function. When these forces operate subconsciously, we are prone to potentially violate the rights of others, sometimes subtly and sometimes in extreme ways. Honest self-reflection reveals inner contradictions that create suffering and divisiveness in our lives. You have the power to release from both your internal and external chains and be free. Emotional conditioning is a physiological experience, and much of our detective work involves checking in and observing the feelings in our body, our somatic symptoms. It is our responsibility to excavate our own psyches and discover the hidden programs operating within our subconscious that are perpetuating violence or division. And from the great cosmic mother, evil is that which prevents the unfolding of the one. The principle of correspondence is visibly at play in our world. From humanity down through the nations and states and subcultures of our world, down to families, individuals, internal parts, and the cells of our body. Humanity as a whole is like a single mind with many subparts. Communities, families, and individuals mirror each other in basic ways. Inner fragmentation both reflects and feeds outer fragmentation. It's a two-way street. Our own minds are divided into compartments, each like a subpersonality, operating in isolation, against others, or in partnership with other parts. We are like fractals of the mind of the whole. Oftentimes, we are not conscious of how our parts are playing out. All is mind, there is a mirroring, and this concept of self-protection and self-defense exists at all levels. The egregores are mental constructs that unify people, create the structure of the psyche, including the defenses that separate. There is a natural tendency in the human mind to divide as a means to make sense of life and as a means of self-protection or self-defense. Similar dynamics of extreme division and conflict arise at every level. The outcomes are not random, but are a result of discoverable psychological dynamics that exist at all levels and start within the minds of individuals. The internal processes of individuals is what creates a climate of unity or division in the external world. Violence or voluntary cooperation, peace or violence. We have a choice and we can make an impact. Witness the correspondences in the world between the macro and the micro, between the collective condition, the state of subgroups, and the culture of your own mind. All levels of being have extreme expressions, polarities, and contradictions. Look at how your mind reflects your environment. Contemplate this. Let's hear from Mark Passio.
They want us to be imbalanced. They want us to constantly be distorted and basically not congruent within our own selves, where we're battling ourselves. And let alone that, they certainly don't want us organizing and coming together and being on the same page, especially when it comes to morality and health.
So let's think about that. Everyone in our own communities, including those working towards freedom, is vulnerable to mind control and have subconscious dynamics that sow division. Each one of us is potentially moving all of us away from rather than towards freedom. Instead of if, we need to ask how. How are you working for and against unity or freedom? How are you perpetuating division, chaos, confusion, disconnection, and conflict? How are your emotions blocking you from getting work done? How can you get along more cooperatively with others? What divides us reflects a wound. When we behave in ways that create division, it leads us away from unity and freedom. We may be consciously and intentionally causing chaos through a lack of care or self-serving agendas, or we are unconsciously driven to divide, or both. Either way, the divisive self-serving behavior originates from an unprocessed or unhealed trauma. Both are driven by subconscious wounds and protective parts. Unprocessed emotions cause us to lose perspective. We are in a paradox. In fact, we are a paradox. Logic and willpower are not enough. Principles alone are inadequate to turn the tide. From Richard Schwartz, we often find that the harder we try to get rid of emotions and thoughts, the stronger they become. This is because parts, like people, fight back against being shamed or exiled. And if we do succeed in dominating them with punitive self-discipline, we then become tyrannized by the rigid, controlling inner drill sergeant. We need love under will. Emotions are power and information. We need to reverse the emotional conditioning. 4 areas of emotional intelligence include self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. These are skills that are important for us all to study and learn and practice. Emotional conditioning splinters minds and splinters groups. Unconscious, misguided, frightened parts of individuals promote divisiveness, argumentativeness, slander, dogma, distraction, inaction, addiction, defensiveness, denial, and exhaustion. And while all that is happening, we are, as a whole, ignoring the unifying and causal creative factors of freedom. We are not harnessing the power of our emotions with focus and conscious clarity. As a result, we are not unified, we are not reaching our potential, and we are not heading in the direction of freedom. Without emotional intelligence and systems thinking, we are fragmented and working in opposition to each other or are out of sync. Our emotional power is diminished and splintered. We need to unite around our care, our passion for the basic principles of human rights and moral living. If we each commit to do our shadow work, we can consequentially move closer to freedom. Emotions are a subjective experience, often conditioned by irrational fear. Emotional reasoning is a mental distortion. Our emotions do not tell the whole truth. However, through processing emotions, we come closer to the truth. Emotions are not to be ignored, dismissed, or buried, or they will take over your reality through subconscious means and distort your perception of the truth. Our ego is often laden with fallacy. The subconscious memory actually brings us closer to the truth, but because it is buried, we often don't see it. This is another reason this work is so important. Being able to see that which has been occulted within our own minds brings us closer to the truth and closer to reality. You can't heal it until you feel it. Trauma, often intergenerational, is carried by parts until someone in the system recognizes, confronts, and unburdens those frozen, wounded inner children. This is an embodied practice, a place where we don't shy away from suffering. An emotional transmutation is required here. So how do we process the unbearable or forgotten? A quote by Vernon Howard, "Human sickness is so severe that few can bear to look at it, but those who do will become well. This requires courage, intention, and discipline. We face the paradox and the shadow. Any repair of our fractured world must start with individuals who have the insight and the courage to own their own shadow. And it is not the monsters of the world who make such chaos, but the collective shadow to which every one of us has contributed. To refuse the dark side of one's nature is to store up or accumulate the darkness. This is later expressed as black moods, illness, or unconsciously inspired accidents or behaviors. We must be whole whether we like it or not. The only choice is whether we will incorporate the shadow consciously and with some dignity, or do it through some neurotic behavior. Unless we do conscious work on it, the shadow is almost always projected. That is, it is neatly laid on someone or something else, so that we do not have to take the responsibility for it ourselves. No one has the right to dump his shadow on you, and you have the right to self-protection. Love is the one word in our Western tradition adequate to describe the synthesis of ego and shadow. And as the shadow is drawn up into consciousness, it becomes softer, more pliable, and more gentle. These are quotes from Owning Your Own Shadow, Understanding the Dark Side of the Psyche. And how do we ignite this healing? Love under will, compassion and connection before correction. How do we sort out truth from fiction and determine what's actually driving us? We can become aware of the operation of our own minds by activating the compassionate witness. We can initiate the process of calling forth the subconscious into the light so we can consciously become truly self-led. This is the first step towards inner monarchy. This brings us to the qualities of self-energy. a term coined by Richard Schwartz from the Internal Family Systems model. He describes several qualities that are part of self-energy, and care is the original spark. Curiosity, a desire to know or learn something. Compassion, a concern for, a recognition of suffering, motivation to take action, supportive engagement. Care, serious consideration applied to doing something of meaning. Creativity, the use of imagination and original ideas. Connectedness, being joined or linked to self and humanity. Confidence, the feeling that one can rely on or be reliable. Self-trust, accountability. Courage, the ability to do something that frightens you. Clarity, the quality of being coherent and intelligible, transparent. Calmness, being free from agitation or violent activity. Patience, the capacity to accept or tolerate delay or discomfort. This is a state of being that is important to cultivate when we do our self-work. And don't just feel your feelings, be present with them from this state of being, this state of self-energy. We enter the womb space, the mandorla, when the most Herculean efforts and the finest discipline no longer keep the painful contradictions of life at bay. We are all in need of the mandorla. The mandorla begins the healing of the split. The overlap generally is very tiny at first, only a sliver of a new mood, but it is a beginning. The mandorla binds together that which was torn apart and made unwhole, holy. The mandorla is Italian for almond, an almond-shaped or oval aureole of light surrounding holy figures and religious art, symbolizing divine glory, the union of heaven and earth, or spiritual power. You can see it in the Vesic of Pisces and in the wise mind, a coin term by Dr. Martha Linehan, the founder of the dialectical behavioral therapy model, to describe the integrated state combining the logical or reasonable mind and the emotional mind. The parts of our thinking representing a balanced, centered way of knowing and acting that incorporates both intuition and facts. This represents the divine feminine as the womb of the universe and the portal of creation. The two circles represent the union of opposites, masculine and feminine, heaven and earth, objective and subjective, with the central vesica being the child or the harmonious manifestation of their union. It is a bridge between the spiritual and the physical worlds. Life is about relationships, like it or not, and our parts are triggered by others' parts. We have relationship with ourself and with all our parts, with other people and all living beings, with the natural and the artificial. And how we navigate relationships has everything to do with achieving freedom. Navigating relationships well is dependent upon our emotional intelligence. It's important that we understand and witness and recognize the pendulum battles. Pendulums can always be found in places where they can survive on conflict energy. Pendulums pull at people with invisible threads as if they were puppets, and they obey. When balancing forces make opposites collide, the pendulums do everything to inflate the energy of rising conflict. That is the law of the pendulum. These are quotes from Transurfing in 78 Days, a practical course in creating your own reality by Vadim Zeland. The pendulum is the universal source of evil. Your task is to unhook yourself from the pendulum at all costs. It is almost impossible to force yourself out of reacting. There is no point to suppress your emotions. Instead, turn your attention to something else. Fear is the magnet of what we don't want. It's not the looking at the negative, but the fear of it. Paradox and the shadow, digesting contradiction. Owning Your Own Shadow, Understanding the Dark Side of the Psyche, a book by Robert Johnson. He talks about the need to honor the shadow and that we cannot push it on someone else. And that it is possible to live by one's ideals and do one's best and actually be courteous and live a decent life if we ritually acknowledge this other dimension of our reality. The unconscious cannot tell the difference between a real act and a symbolic one. This means that we can aspire to beauty and goodness and pay out the darkness in a symbolic way. This enables us to do the upkeep on the left side of the balance. This will include the tools of imagination and visualization, active imagination and visualization. Embrace the paradox, for the paradox is creative. It is a powerful embracing of reality and makes room for grace and mystery. Power without love becomes brutal, and love without power is insipid and weak. A true paradox makes for a strong devotion and a mystical union, powerful enough to endure all the problems. Accepting and working with paradox. Jung has a concept of individuation, or holding the tension of opposites, which involves recognizing and integrating conflicting psychic forces. True integration means consciously holding both opposing views without identifying with just one, creating a creative tension, leading to greater consciousness and individuation. And the Hermetic mental law of neutralization is a method to manage the effects of rhythm and polarity, or extreme swings, through conscious choices. It reflects a way to wield the principles rather than be used by them. In internal family systems, a method of therapeutic alchemy designed by Richard Schwartz, we utilize the energy of self-energy to access the spirit of compassionate curiosity, to explore and process thoughts, experiences, emotions, and consequences. It is the spirit of self-energy that is a state of being that can call forth the safe exploration of very painful feelings. It provides the soil for which the seeds to grow and to be seen. All this involves becoming skilled in mindfulness and receptivity. Self-energy is a gift of the goddess. She unifies the opposites. Her superpowers help us with discernment, clarity, and firm yet kind action. Parts, trauma, and inner conflict. Parts theory and the work of Richard Schwartz sheds light on how our minds work and how we can heal the internal and external divides. Traumatic or overwhelming experiences and attachment disruptions of relationship in early childhood signal our system to defend. Our mind splinters into parts that endeavor to protect the wounded young parts which carry the memories. These protector parts amplify when feeling unsafe. This is a natural subconscious process of self-protection and reorganization which results in personality patterns and unconscious coping reactions. If the original wound is not processed and the mind perceives a continued lack of safety, the parts become more extreme and more compartmentalized. Thus, they become cut off from the whole of self and from each other. This natural mental process gets amplified by trauma because our system is built to seek safety. And we can blend with our parts and get very confused as to what is our true self and what is a part. When something occurs that reminds our subconscious memory of a threat, our protective parts automatically activate. If not processed and brought into conscious leadership, the unconscious dynamics run the show and we are essentially not self-led. This often brings polarization and contradiction into our lives. It's as if each part of us is like a mini person, a persona with its own true purpose. And that action can operate without our conscious awareness. The basics of IFS, our internal parts operate as a system, like a family, and we can learn to observe and map out how our internal parts work together, or in opposition or isolation. We can learn to see the patterns, alliances, polarizations, and interactions among our internal parts. We can discover how parts are unconsciously creating conflict and division. He has coined the following terms to help us understand how this works. We have exiles, the usually young, wounded parts that hold memory and pain. They are stuck in time and age. Protector parts are defenders that rush in to protect the exiled parts from being engulfed or destroyed. They're often also stuck in time and age. Protectors can be managers or firefighters. Manager parts are often appreciated in our world because they're the planners, the controllers, critics, perfectionists, the judgers. These parts obsess, organize, are overthinkers, motivators, drivers, and discipliners. Our firefighters, though, jump in when the managers are exhausted and the pain of the exile starts to leak through, and they bring on the big water hose with impulsive behaviors, dissociations, acting out, addictive behaviors, extreme entertainment, compulsive behaviors, suicidal thoughts, violence, and extreme avoidance. And then, of course, we have our self energy, this mindful presence that can observe our inner landscape and of somatic experiences, and that holds a specific frequency of compassionate curiosity. This we need to consciously cultivate in order to discover the dynamics of our mind and to catalyze optimal healing, integration, and internal self-leadership or internal monarchy. Cultivating the spirit of agape love is an essential element to healing our wounded parts and transforming our lives. From Ecstasy, Understanding the Psychology of Joy by Jungian scholar Robert A. Johnson. We like to think of ourselves as individuals, but it is important to remember that on a deep level, we are really plural beings. That is, we are one being made up of quite a number of distinct personalities, behaviors, archetypes, all looking for expression. When we first dip beneath the surface in search of these personalities, we may feel insecure because we are in uncharted waters. And according to Jung, humanity holds a special role in creation to contribute to the act of consciousness and the point of view of morality in its highest sense. Here are some quotes by Richard Schwartz to further explain this process. I encourage you to come back and revisit. I'll just share a couple. There's nothing inside of you that has any power if you are in self and are not afraid of it. And different parts maintain their separateness while communicating and collaborating with each other, while the self conducts this inner orchestra. We don't lose our parts. We don't all blend together in one big goopy mess. There still needs to be separation, but it is the self that conducts this process. And when people access self, they often quickly sense their purpose. And I want to add this, that when we have a lot of exiles, our protectors often have no choice but to be egoistic, hedonistic, or dissociative. And that is why the development of the perspective of self-energy is so important. True purpose will benefit more than just yourself. And troublesome parts, these extreme symptoms, are ultimately protectors of the underlying unhealed wound. The part's core intention is good. Its function is to protect. By cultivating compassion for the part and its intention, we catalyze the healing process. We therefore have the ability to see how it operates and to have an impact through a dialogue with that part. We also need to recognize that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The truth is sobering. Inner work requires both compassion with suspended judgment while seeking to understand the truth of the matter, including the intentions and functions, and hold accountability for right and wrong actions based on natural law, rights, and principles. Find a balance of compassion for and unblending from your parts. Compassion and self-defense live side by side. This is the way we preserve freedom. Embrace the paradox, where we synthesize the poles, where we dissolve the contradictions, we process and transmute, we ground ourselves and ascend, we choose truth, right, and love. Synthesis of complexity is a gift of the goddess. Enter the inner temple. Mindfulness is a gateway. With present moment awareness, seek understanding before judgment. Can you temporarily suspend judgment in order to inquire and attain the truth of a matter? Do you care enough about the truth to do this? As Rumi says, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. We need to find a common meeting ground. This inner temple must feel safe for honest communication and deep healing to occur. Mindfulness creates space between the stimulus and the response, a place for witnessing. John Kabat-Zinn, in Full Catastrophe Living, defines mindfulness as paying attention in the present moment, on purpose, non-judgmentally. And it is here we embrace both the inner feminine and masculine. These qualities are separate from man and woman. We all have these qualities within us. The law of gender tells us that the feminine and the masculine exists in all things, and the great cosmic mother embodies both. The mother and the father work in unison. A balanced psyche has both, a strong, clear inner masculine in service to a wise, receptive inner feminine. Processing is the sacred art of integrating one's consciousness. Processing is the second step of the trivium. It involves both cognitive and emotional aspects. Here is where we witness, understand, and transform information and inner and outer experiences. This is a truth-seeking, responsibility-taking path. It's hard, it's fulfilling, and it's empowering. Psychological processing is this sacred responsibility to self, to others, and to the earth. It is a choice to stop passing trauma forward. Please note that rumination, overanalyzing, and flashbacks are not processing. Processing is deliberate witnessing of ourselves and involves feeling feelings, understanding function, making meaning, and integrating, not reliving. We feel our feelings from the witness point of view. Psychological processing is complex and has many parts to it. I encourage you to come back to this slide and think more deeply about each of these items. Processing synthesizes the opposites. It is both active and receptive. And if you don't consciously guide your internal, external processes, your subconscious will guide them. The intention and imagination are both important. The hero's journey. Joseph Campbell's monomyth has 8 stages of this process, and this involves the underworld journey. We have a departure, an initiation, and a return. This process I'm talking about is in the phase of initiation, where we meet the goddess. The meeting of the goddess, the hero experiences a love that has the power and significance of the all-powerful, unconditional love an infant may experience with their mother. This is the self-energy, the divine mother-father presence that we can activate within our own mind. And this is where we can transform and transmute in order to move successfully through the rest of our journey. Now, the feminine, the goddess, can also be a temptress. The temptations that may lead the hero to stray from their quest. This could include emotional indulgence or remaining a perpetual child. atonement with the Father, the hero must confront and be initiated by whatever holds ultimate power in life. Well, this is natural law. This is the path of life that is always staying aligned with the positive aspects of moral truth, living and acting in goodness. Apotheosis is the point of realization in which a greater understanding is achieved. Revelation brings new perspective. We use the power of active imagination. This is a key alchemical ingredient, and this is the quality of the witness. Robert Johnson says the imagination is neither the conscious nor the unconscious, but rather what lies between the two. Here, on the meeting ground of imagination, the ego and the archetype can speak as equals, each learning from the other. We are receptive in this place and invite this dialogue. Acknowledging each part from a state of self-energy while you seek to understand each part's protective intention and update it on the truth and consequences and negotiate for an improved job description. The self-energy creates the safe space for vulnerability and transformation. It is a state where we cultivate the perpetual love of a cosmic mother and father. Think of the space like an imaginal womb space where we go to learn about and regenerate ourself, where we allow a dismantling and a disintegration of old thoughts and beliefs in order to recreate new based on an integration of truth and reality. In the womb of the great cosmic mother, we experience an alchemical death, transmutation, and rebirth. We rewrite inner scripts simultaneously as we sew emotional wounds and see ourselves closer to our expanded potential. The spirit of the dialogue matters, and the power of visualization is an important tool here as well. This is directed imagination. The visualization technique is a mental rehearsal process that combines clear intention with elevated emotion to rewire the brain and condition the body to a new future. By vividly imagining desired experiences and outcomes as if they are or have already happened, one moves from thinking to feeling, breaking past limiting beliefs and creating new neural pathways. We can use this power of visualization to recreate the traumas of our lives and bring new emotional experiences to our reality. Fire, the vigorous and transformative spark, calls us to unite our passions and to refine our beings, shedding the superfluous to reveal our true essences. And here we have an image of a woman who's in her self-energy, who's gone face to face with her parts and mapped them out into a visual form where she can see this people pleaser that led to being a perfectionist. And polarizing this perfectionist is a self-critic and a punisher because she's not good enough, because she carries this guilt and shame. And there's a denial of reality because she's stuck in the programming of her past and ever seeking to be this high achiever but never feeling worthy. And sometimes this becomes so painful that she dissociates, is terrified of the consequences of not being good enough, feels depression, occasional suicidal thoughts, and has physical pain. When she looks into each of these parts and spends time to get to know them, she discovers that there are memories from her past that rise to the surface that show her why these parts were created in the first place and how they were trying to protect her or protect the child that's holding these memories from being overwhelmed, engulfed, or deeply hurt. We can all map out our parts, and here some recent parts that I've put together around a mother wound, I would say, where I have personified some of these in pictures. You could do the same. We can map out the inner relationship of our parts. Be empty of worrying. Think of who created thought. Why do you stay in prison when the door is so wide open? Move outside the tangle of fear thinking. Live in silence. Flow down and down in always widening rings of being. Rumi. Welcome the gift of the goddess. Integrate selves. Strategically unify. Revere in the power of the great cosmic mother, where polarity is softened and rigid walls dissolved, where proper boundaries protect self, without unruly extremes. We seek and embrace this alchemical process, which disintegrates, cleanses, and rebuilds before coming out more whole, conscious, and integrated. This process can occur within us and between us, in families and between families, within and among extended networks and systems of all kinds and sizes. It takes will and willingness to do the work despite fear. Harmonizing natural law principles with care and willpower is the way to freedom. Woman as Divine, Tales of the Goddess by Miriam Baker, from her chapter Theater of Transformation. The practice of sacred drama is a journey into past, present, and future as human beings on this planet. It is a discovery and unfolding of divine archetypes within and without. In this theater of the unknown, we work with the alchemy of transmutation, taking the base, gross, unrefined, and through conscious and specific concentration, allow the painful chrysalis of transformation to happen. We can discover the life of being by diving into the space of heart, discovering their latent power, beauty, and perfection. There is then discovery of self through loss of self. We all wear masks over the self, and by becoming master of the masks, we learn to act and live in the world rather than react, sleep, and dream while awake. Entering the timeless breath of compassion and mercy, we can give birth to the infinite self we long to be and know we are. Here are some practical daily practices for internal monarchy, rituals of reconnection. Frequent brief mindfulness check-ins, pauses, body scans, breath awareness, parts checkups. Lengthier daily introspection, where you can observe the patterns. Invite and sit with thoughts and feelings, witness them from self-energy, get to know them. Journal, name, learn about, and map and dialogue with your parts. Cultivate these internal relationships consciously. Give gratitude generously. Use visualization to reparent the wounded parts once you have become well acquainted with those protector parts. Spend time in nature to reattune to rhythms and observe how nature operates. Show small, consistent acts of self-respect and responsibility to rewire and rebuild self-trust. Declare your desire to know the truth. Cosmic Mother's Guide to the Destruction and Rebirth of Freedom. Her lessons include: healing and regeneration is both a sacred responsibility and a natural event. Healing involves both destruction and creation. The great cosmic mother lives within us as self-energy and deep receptivity. We can access her. Her compassionate witness catalyzes healing and allows us to reclaim self-leadership or internal monarchy. From this space, we can more easily absorb and observe the objective reality and discover our purpose within it. As more minds heal, human freedom and unity become possible. Can we now agree upon a unifying message? That it's important to care for ourselves and all our relationships? No one has the right to enslave another. Every human has the same inherent rights. No human has the right to claim authority or ownership over another human. Change must start with the individual and extend to the whole. Active care and willpower working together is necessary for progress. Mindfully processing our thoughts and emotions in the spirit of love is the path to internal monarchy and self-leadership. We heal ourselves through the spirit of agape love. We embody this through filial love, through brotherhood and sisterhood. And natural law is our guide to right action and objective morality. Thank you for listening. Please share this with your friends. Ignite hearts and minds. I'm Leslie Powers. You can reach me at the email address revivingsophia@proton.me if you're interested in any of my services. You can find my work at my tap link listed here. And remember,